Thank you, Senator Hatch.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, I want to make it clear that having gone there and one of the earliest ones to go there, I do not agree with closing Guantanamo. The big issue is, even if we did, what do we do with them? What's the alternative? I've heard a lot of the senators around here bemoaning the fact they sure don't want these terrorists in their state. Fact of the matter is, it's a separate place where they can be contained, and appropriately so. So I'm opposed to closing Guantanamo. I think it's ridiculous. I think the arguments have been ridiculous. And I hope you'll consider changing your mind on that, because I just think it's wrong. But now, you may not have had, having said that, I just thought I'd make that point. You may not have had a full opportunity to explain what happened the day of your hospital visit to Attorney General Ashcroft. So if you would, please finish your description of those events so we can all understand just what happened there.
The meeting that I was referring to occurred on the afternoon of March 10th, just hours before Andy Card and I went to the hospital. And the purpose of that meeting was to advise the Gang of Eight, the leadership of the Congress, that Mr. Comey had informed us that he would not approve the continuation of a very important intelligence activity, despite the fact that the department had repeatedly approved those activities over a period of over 2 years. We informed the leadership that Mr. Comey felt the President did not have the authority to authorize these activities. And we were there asking for help, to ask for emergency legislation.
Was Mr. Comey there during those 2 years?
Mr. Comey, he was not there during the entire time, no, sir.
So how much of that time?
I can't recall now, Senator, when Jim Comey became the Deputy Attorney General. The consensus in the room from the congressional leadership is that we should continue the activities, at least for now, despite the objections of Mr. Comey. There was also consensus that it would be very, very difficult to obtain legislation without compromising this program, that we should look for a way ahead. It is for this reason that within a matter of hours, Andy Card and I went to the hospital. We felt it important that the Attorney General knew about the views and the recommendations of the congressional leadership, that as a former member of Congress and as someone who had authorized these activities for over 2 years, that it might be important for him to hear this information. That was a reason that Mr. Card and I went to the hospital. Obviously, we were concerned about the condition of General Ashcroft. We obviously knew he had been ill and had surgery, and we never had any intent to ask anything of him if we did not feel that he was competent. When we got there, I would just say that Mr. Ashcroft did most of the talking. We were there maybe 5 minutes, 5 to 6 minutes. Mr. Ashcroft talked about the legal issues in an elusive form, as I've heard him talk about legal issues in the White House. But at the end of his description of the legal issues, he said, "I'm not making this decision. The Deputy Attorney General is." And so Andy Card and I thanked him. We told him that we would continue working with the Deputy Attorney General, and we left. And so I just wanted to put it in context for this committee and the American people why Mr. Card and I went. It's because we had an emergency meeting in the White House Situation Room where the congressional leadership had told us, continue going forward with this very important intelligence activity. I might also add...
That was the Gang of Eight, you're saying.
Pardon me?
That was the Gang of Eight.
This was the Gang of Eight.
The leaders in the House, the 2 leaders in the Senate, the 2 leaders of the Intelligence Committee in the House, and 2 leaders of the Intelligence Committee in the Senate, right?
That is correct. I might also add...
Democrats and Republicans?
Democrats and Republicans. I might also add that the urgency is that the authorities in question were set to expire the very next day.
Right.
And the President believed this was a very important activity, as did the congressional leadership. In fact, the very next morning, we had the Madrid bombings. And so that puts into perspective the context of the environment that we were operating under. These are the reasons why we went to the hospital on the evening of March 10th.
Well, thank you, sir. The administration has made proposals to modernize FISA, of course, and is working with the Judiciary Committee to ensure that appropriate staff members have the necessary information and about the terrorist surveillance plans of the administration. However, some members of the committee have stated that they will not consider any legislation in this area until they receive additional information about the TSP. I do find this logic somewhat questionable, since this very committee not only considered but passed 3 different bills dealing with FISA modernization during the last Congress. Now, how do you view the decision to not discuss FISA modernization? Of all issues, isn't this one in which increased attention and expediency is paramount?
This is the most important legislative agenda item for the Department of Justice, FISA modernization. The threats exist against the United States, and we believe that FISA, while it's been a valuable tool, also has made it more difficult to engage in electronic surveillance of foreign targets overseas. We don't believe that was ever the intent of FISA. It's a policy question. Congress has to decide, do they want the department and the agency, NSA, the FBI, the Department of Justice, utilizing our resources, our agents, our analysts, our lawyers, in order to make a probable cause determination and then present it to a judge in connection with a foreign terrorist who's located outside the United States? Is that what the Congress wants us to do? Because if they do, we'll continue to do it. But I think it's a legitimate question to ask. Is that the right policy for the United States today?
Now, you've been accused of wanting to install interim U.S. attorneys to serve indefinitely without Senate confirmation. I don't think there's ever been any evidence for that. But then some accusations would be more useful than they are true. Since you were first asked about this more than a year and a half ago, you said that it is your intention to have a Senate-confirmed appointee to these positions. Now, I raise this point to point out that we continue to see nominations to U.S. attorney positions of men and women who have been serving in an interim capacity. This is exactly what you said the administration intended to do, if I recall it correctly. We've seen this recently in Nebraska, Puerto Rico, and elsewhere. Now, is that your continued commitment to have Senate-confirmed U.S. attorneys in each jurisdiction?
It is. I believe that the U.S. attorney, quite frankly, is stronger in dealing with other law enforcement counterparts at the federal, state, and local level. And it's also, I think, vitally important with respect to the Deputy Attorney General. We have, I think, a very strong interim. We will have soon a very strong interim Deputy Attorney General, but my intention and hope is that we have someone who's considered and confirmed by the Senate soon.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Are you saying that the interim Attorney General who served as an interim U.S. attorney in 2 different places, his name was never set for confirmation for that his name will now finally be sent up here for confirmation for something?
His name, well, I'm not saying that his name will be sent up for confirmation. After the White House has completed its very thorough background investigation and interviews of candidates, the intention is to send up someone for consideration by the Senate to confirm as a Deputy Attorney General.
He's interim, having been an interim U.S. attorney in 2 different jurisdictions.
He is the interim. He will be the interim as soon as Mr. McNulty leaves.
Thought I'd ask. And you said that you spoke of how important it is to you to have this committee look at updates for FISA. Have you ever taken even 30 seconds or a minute to call me and tell me that? I mean, I just heard this from you for the first time here. You know, I have a listed telephone number.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I lost
You just said to
my
Senator
train of
Hatch
thinking.
that it's extraordinarily important to you that this committee consider updates on FISA laws. Have you ever said that to me? Have you ever picked up the phone, called me, or told me that?
Senator, I would be surprised if that hasn't been communicated in a letter, and certainly has been communicated to your staff in terms of the importance of FISA modernization.
I have a listed telephone number. Feel free to call anytime